Hello friends, I am Joy and today we will be discussing about the recent Supreme Court judgment regarding the secrecy of ballot. So we will see here what was the Supreme Court judgment in this regard. We will also see what were the important observations made by the Supreme Court in this regard. We will also see what is the background of this issue. How did this issue came up to the Supreme Court in the form of appeal. So how was the origin of this case? And then we will also be discussing about the importance of secrecy in a democracy, how secrecy is important as a component of conducting free and fair elections. Free and fair elections are one of the basic principles of democracies that we have adopted in India. So how secrecy of ballot act as a very important factor in determining free and fair elections. So these are the topics that we will be discussing today in this lecture. A very important topic from your mains perspective, especially in your GS paper 2, a very important topic. So let's begin the lecture. Let's start with the current affair. So current affair is that recently in a judgment, the Supreme Court, the apex court, Supreme Court is the apex court of our country. Supreme Court has said that secrecy of ballot is the cornerstone of free and fair elections. So conducting free and fair elections is a basic principle of democracy that we have adopted in our constitution, and in achieving this objective of conducting free and fair elections. Now, what is meant by free and fair elections? By the term free, it means that the process of election should be free from other issues like that of money power or muscle power or any other factors. So, free conduct of elections and fair conduct of elections. Now, what is meant by fair conduct of elections? By saying fair conduct of elections, it means that everyone should be given an opportunity to contest in the elections as well as to vote in the elections, irrespective of the caste, creed or gender or other biases. So, in this recent judgment, Supreme Court said that secrecy of ballot is the cornerstone of free and fair elections. That means in achieving the objective of free and fair elections, secrecy of ballot is very important, or it is a key determinant. Now let's come to the details. Now Supreme Court said that the choice of a voter should be free, which is ensured by the secret ballot system in a democracy. That means in the election process, the choice of a voter voting for any person or for any political party, the choice should be free. That means he should be ensured or she should be ensured secrecy of voting through a secret ballot system in order to ensure that the basic objective of free and fair elections is met. Now coming to the details of judgment, let's see what are the important highlights of the judgment. First one, the principle of secrecy of ballot is an important postulate of constitutional democracy, and it is referred to in section 94 of the RPA, which is the Representation of People Act of 1951. RPA is very important topic for your UPSC prelims and mains examination. In your main syllabus, if you see the notification of UPSC, you will see that there is a topic itself mentioned as Representation of People Act of 1951. So, very important topic. Now, Supreme Court said that the principle of secrecy of ballot, it is very important in achieving constitutional democracy. Now, what is meant by constitutional democracy? Constitutional democracy means the democracy or the democratic principles as enshrined in the Constitution. And also, it has been referred in the RPA, Representation of People Act of 1951, a very important act. Now coming to the details of section 94 of RPA, it upholds the privilege of the voters to maintain confidentiality about the choice of their vote. So section 94, it upholds the privilege, which means the voters are given the right and privilege to maintain confidentiality about the choice of the vote. And the law must protect the right of voters to secrecy of ballot. So the law is responsible to protect the right of the voters to secrecy of ballot. So, secrecy of ballot is a right of the voter. Even a remote or distinct possibility that a voter can be forced to disclose for whom she or he has voted would act as a constraint and a check on the freedom to exercise the franchise. So, this is another observation made by the Supreme Court. Even if there is a remote possibility, a very distinct possibility that the voter is forced to disclose the person for whom the vote has been casted, then this will definitely act as a constraint, and also this is a check on the freedom to exercise the franchise. Voter can voluntarily waive the privilege of non-disclosure. So this is another observation made by the Supreme Court. Even though secrecy of ballot is a right to the voter can choose voluntarily to waive this privilege. That means the voter can voluntarily choose to disclose the information about the casting of vote. So this can be done voluntarily. So this is all up to the voter whether to disclose or not. If the voter doesn't want to disclose, the law should be responsible to protect the confidentiality of the voter. At the same time, if voter wants to disclose, then the voter can choose to do so. And the privilege ends when the voter decides to waive it and decides voluntarily to disclose their vote. So this privilege is confidentiality of voting or confidentiality regarding the information of voting. So this privilege ends when the voter decides to waive this privilege and decides voluntarily to disclose their vote. The voters can neither be prevented from disclosing nor can be subjected to a complaint by anyone. So, voters can neither be prevented from disclosing. If the voter wants to disclose, he or she can disclose, or cannot be subjected to a complaint by anyone. Now, let's see how did this judgment from the Supreme Court came up. What is the background of this judgment? So, this judgment of the Supreme Court, it came on an appeal against the Allahabad High Court's decision. So, this came as a appellate order of the Supreme Court from Allahabad High Court decision. So what was the Allahabad High Court decision? The Allahabad High Court had set aside the voting of a non-confidence motion, no confidence motion in a Zilla Panchayat in Uttar Pradesh in 2018. So earlier the Allahabad High Court had set aside the voting of a no confidence motion in a Zilla Panchayat in Uttar Pradesh in 2018. And a no confidence motion or a vote of no confidence or a no trust vote can be sought to express that there is no longer confidence in the government. We know what is a no confidence motion. So, if a no confidence motion is moved and if it is finally passed, not only moved, but if a non-confidence motion is passed, then the particular government will have to resign. So, in case of Lok Sabha, the Council of Ministers will have to resign and this will lead to fresh elections. So, if a no confidence motion is passed, then it shows that there is no longer confidence in the government. So, if we look into the background of the Supreme Court judgment, this came as an appeal against the Allahabad High Court's decision, which set aside the voting of a no confidence motion in Zilla Panchayat in Uttar Pradesh. Now, why did the Allahabad High Court set aside the election? Let's come to the reason. Allahabad High Court found that some of the Panchayat members had violated the rule of secrecy of the ballot. So, it was the observation of the Allahabad High Court that some of the Panchayat members violated the rule of secrecy of the ballot. And the Supreme Court referred to the section 28(8) subclause 8 of the Uttar Pradesh Kshetra Panchayat and Zilla Panchayat Adhiniyam 1961. So these are certain rules, and ordered for a revote of the motion within the next 2 months by secret ballot system. So this is the Supreme Court judgment in this case. So Supreme Court said that the revote should be conducted within 2 months and this should be followed by a secret ballot system. And this provision states that a motion of no confidence shall be put to vote in the prescribed manner by secret ballot. So here important thing is that the Supreme Court has now pronounced that the vote or motion of no confidence, it shall be put to vote in a prescribed manner by a secret ballot. So this is the importance of this judgment. Now if a prelims question is asked regarding the secrecy of ballot regarding no confidence motion, then Supreme Court has pronounced that even a no confidence motion, the voting of the no confidence motion should be done by secret ballot system. Now coming to the restoring of secrecy of ballot. Secrecy of ballot has become a notional concept after the introduction of EVMs. This is very important. In the year 2018, in the mains examination, in the UPSC Civil Services mains examination, there was a direct question regarding secrecy of ballots and how it is related to EVMs, whether the introduction of EVMs or the electronic voting machines has brought some kind of challenge to the voting process in India. I'll just tell you the question. So question was that in the light of recent controversy over the use of EVMs, what are the challenges before the Election Commission of India to ensure the trustworthiness of elections in India? So this was a 150 words question, a 10 marker question in the mains examination, GS paper 2. In your 2018 UPSC mains examination. So this is a very important topic, the introduction of EVMs and the controversies associated with it. So what are the challenges the Election Commission of India is facing with regard to controversies around the EVMs, and how Election Commission can ensure the trustworthiness or regain the confidentiality of the voters. So this was the question, 2018 question. Now, secrecy of ballot. Now coming back to our topic of discussion, secrecy of ballot has become a notional concept after the introduction of electronic voting machines. So there are various controversies associated with it, and since the voters believe that only they themselves and their trusted ones know who they voted for, which is not true actually, because EVMs give a near accurate idea of voting patterns. So this is the controversy, that the electronic voting machines, they give a near idea about the voting patterns of the voters. That is why it is said that the EVMs does not provide transparency or secrecy regarding the voting process. And each EVM is used for about 1400 electors, and votes cast in EVMs are individually counted and tallied booth wise. This is why it does not allow for secrecy. The voting patterns will be clear. Before the introduction of EVMs, what was the pattern that we were following? The ballot papers were mixed to prevent the intimidation of voters by disclosure of voting patterns. So before the introduction of EVMs, we had the ballot papers, and the ballot papers, they were mixed in order to prevent the intimidation or getting the idea about the voting patterns. And the idea of voting patterns gives an advantage to political parties, which can be neutralized if the totalizers are deployed to count votes in a constituency. So by identifying the voting patterns, it gives an advantage to the political parties, and this advantage can be neutralized if the totalizers are deployed to count the votes in a constituency. So totalizers will help in mixing or not giving an idea about the voting patterns. Now what is a totalizer? It's a mechanism which allows votes from 14 booths to be counted together. That's why we said it allows for mixing. So using a totalizer, the votes from 14 booths can be mixed and they can be counted together, so that the voting patterns will not be clear. And this result obtained is without disclosure of votes polled by candidates at particular voting booths. So 14 booths, the votes will be counted together, and the results will not give any idea about each booth. So how is the pattern in each booth? Therefore, this will eliminate post-poll victimization by any candidate, and also this will not provide an unfair advantage to any political parties by disclosing the voting patterns. Now coming to RPA, let's discuss about some important points about RPA, not covering RPA in detail. Definitely I'll come up with a lecture which will include the entire provisions of RPA, which is a very important topic for your mains examination. So RPA, the Representation of People's Act was introduced with the idea that holding of free and fair elections is sine qua non of democracy, which means it is the most essential part of democracy. So which cannot be avoided. Essential part of democracy is holding free and fair elections. To ensure the conduct of elections in free, fair and in impartial manner, the constitution makers incorporated part 15 in the constitution and empowered the parliament to make laws to regulate the electoral process. So, the RPA, the Representation of People's Act, has an origin from Part 15 of the Constitution, which empowered the Parliament. Parliament is the legislature. Parliament is the law-making body. So, Parliament has been empowered by the Constitution to make laws to regulate the electoral process in India, and accordingly, the Parliament enacted the Representation of People Act of 1950 and Representation of People Act of 1951. So, it is the Constitution that empowered the Parliament to make changes in the electoral process, to strengthen the electoral process, and according to that, the Parliament enacted the RPA in 1951. And Election Commission of India, the ECI, is the watchdog of free and fair elections in the country, and Article 324 of the Constitution provides for its establishment, which means that Election Commission of India is a constitutional body. Now coming to key provisions of the RPA 1951. It regulates actual conduct of elections and by-elections. So, regulation of actual conduct of the elections and by-elections. It provides administrative machinery for conducting the elections. Again, it deals with registration of political parties. It specifies qualification and disqualification for the membership of the houses. It provides provision to curb corrupt practices and other offences. It lays down procedure for settling doubts and disputes arising out of elections. So here we will see that it's a very comprehensive act which covers in entirety all the important provisions related with the elections.